Mary Johnson was just a new maid, barely noticed and trusted. But when she found the billionaire's daughter, Princess, gasping for breath, panic set in. With no staff around and the mansion eerily silent, she faced a heart-wrenching choice. In a desperate bid to save the girl, she broke into his locked office, snatched the car keys and a bundle of cash, and sped off. But as alarms blared and security closed in, she knew her life would never be the same again. Kindly let me know where you're watching from and like this video. Stay tuned to uncover the truth. The silence in the sprawling Madrid villa was the first thing that felt wrong. It was a heavy, suffocating silence, utterly out of place in a home usually humming with the quiet efficiency of a dozen staff members. Mary Johnson, a ghost in a gray uniform, pushed her clean cart down the marbled hallway, the squeak of its wheels an unwelcome intrusion. Hired only a week ago, her primary function was to be invisible, to erase any sign of human presence. A smudge on a window, a speck of dust on a gleaming floor. A faint wheezing sound from upstairs broke the stillness. Mary froze, her hand tightening on the cart's handle. It was a choked, desperate noise, like a tiny bird struggling for air. Her instructions were clear. Never engage with the family, never speak unless spoken to, and under no circumstances were you to go to the family's private wing unless summoned. But the sound came again, weaker this time, followed by a soft thud. Every instinct screamed at her to ignore it, to keep her head down and her job safe. But a colder, more primal fear gripped her, the memory of another small child, another lifetime ago, struggling for breath. Abandoning the cart, Mary ran up the sweeping staircase, her soft-soled shoes making no sound. The door to the playroom was ajar. Pushing it open, she saw her. 6-year-old Princess, the billionaire's daughter, was on the floor, her small body convulsing. Her face was a terrifying shade of blue, her wide, panicked eyes pleading for help she couldn't ask for. Her inhaler lay just out of reach of her twitching fingers. "Princess!" Mary gasped, rushing to her side. She grabbed the inhaler, but the girl was too weak to use it. The wheezing was barely audible now. She needed a hospital. Immediately. Mary's mind raced. Where was everyone? The head housekeeper, the nanny, the security detail that was usually a constant, subtle presence. She ran through the silent halls, her calls echoing unanswered. The landlines were dead. Her own cheap phone had no signal within these thick, imposing walls. Panic, cold and sharp, clawed at her throat. She was alone. A nobody. A new maid with no authority, no access, no one to call. But a little girl was dying. Her eyes fell on the heavy oak door at the end of the hall, the office of the man himself, Damien Blackwood. A man she had only ever seen in photographs. A man whose name was a synonym for power, wealth, and ruthless control. The door was locked, always locked. In that moment, Mary Johnson, the timid, invisible maid, ceased to exist. She was replaced by a mother who had once lost everything. She grabbed a heavy bronze statue from a pedestal, the cold weight of it a shock to her system. Without a second's hesitation, she smashed it against the reinforced glass panel next to the door handle. The sound was an explosion in the silence. The alarm system shrieked to life, a deafening, pulsating wail. Red lights flashed down the hallways, painting the pristine white walls in strokes of blood and panic. Mary didn't falter. She reached through the shattered glass, her hand getting sliced in the process, and unlocked the door from the inside. Damien Blackwood's office was like a fortress, dark wood, leather, and the cold glint of technology. On the massive desk lay a set of car keys and a thick stack of euros bound by a simple paper band. She didn't know why the cash was there, and she didn't care. She snatched both, ran back to the playroom, and scooped the now limp body of Princess into her arms. As she sprinted out of the villa and towards the garage, the estate's security gates began to slide shut. She fumbled with the key fob, finding the button for a sleek, black Ferrari. The engine roared to life, a beast awakening. She laid Princess gently on the passenger seat and slammed the car into gear, speeding down the long driveway. She made it through the gates with only seconds to spare, the screech of protesting metal echoing behind her as they closed. Driving through the streets of Madrid, the sound of the mansion's alarm was replaced by the wail of sirens closing in from all directions. She could see the flashing lights in her rearview mirror, a relentless, converging pack of wolves. She knew she looked like a kidnapper, a thief. A desperate black woman in a maid's uniform, driving a stolen supercar with a billionaire's child unconscious beside her. She knew this was the end of her life as she knew it. But as she glanced at the small, fragile girl gasping for life, she knew she would do it all again. She screeched to a halt at the emergency entrance of the Hospital Ruber International, kicking the door open and screaming for help. Ayuda, no puede respirar. Nurses and doctors swarmed them, whisking Princess away on a gurney. And as the chaos of the emergency room enveloped the child, a different kind of chaos enveloped Mary. 2 large security guards grabbed her arms, their grips like iron. Moments later, the police arrived. "You have the right to remain silent," an officer said, his voice hard as he snapped handcuffs onto her wrists. The cold click of the metal was the sound of a door slamming shut, the same sound the gavel had made in her mind all those years ago. As they led her away, she saw a tall, imposing figure stride into the hospital, his face a mask of cold fury. Damien Blackwood had arrived. His icy blue eyes met hers for a fraction of a second, and in them she saw no mercy, no understanding. Only the promise of ruin. Damien Blackwood did not feel emotions, he processed data. And the data was telling him this was a coordinated, professional attack. His entire household staff, including his daughter's longtime nanny, had called in sick within the same hour, all citing food poisoning from the same restaurant, a restaurant they had not visited. The landlines had been cut. His personal security chief, Arthur, had been diverted across the city on a false tip. It was a perfectly executed breach. And at the center of it was the new maid, Mary Johnson, a woman with a sparse, unremarkable history, a ghost. He stood in a private hospital waiting room, a sterile white box that did nothing to calm the storm raging within him. Princess was stable. The doctors had called it a severe, near-fatal anaphylactic shock, an allergic reaction. But Princess had no known allergies. "She's a professional," Damien said, his voice dangerously quiet. He was speaking to Arthur, a mountain of a man in a tailored suit who had served his family for decades. "She knew our protocols. She knew how to create chaos. The theft was a diversion. This was a kidnapping attempt that went wrong." Arthur looked down at the tablet in his hands. "Sir, with respect, it doesn't track. If she was a pro, why drive directly to the nearest hospital? Why scream for help? Why get caught so easily?" "A failed extraction," Damien countered, pacing the room. "She panicked. I want her interrogated. I want to know who she works for. A rival corporation. A foreign entity. I want a name." Mary sat in a cold, windowless room. Not a police station, but somewhere far more intimidating. A secure facility on the Blackwood estate. The handcuffs were gone, but the 2 silent guards at the door were just as effective. She was exhausted, terrified, and her hand, crudely bandaged by a paramedic, throbbed with a dull ache. The door opened, and Damien Blackwood entered. In person, he was more imposing than any photograph. He moved with the predatory grace of a panther, his cold eyes missing nothing. Arthur stood behind him, a silent, monolithic shadow. "Who do you work for?" Damien asked. There was no preamble, no accusation. Just a simple question that sounded like a death sentence. Mary looked up, her eyes red-rimmed from exhaustion and fear. "I work for you, Mr. Blackwood." Her voice was a hoarse whisper. "Do not play games with me," he said, his voice dropping lower. "The money you stole, the car, these are trivialities. But my daughter is not. You put her life in danger. This was a kidnapping attempt. Tell me who hired you, and I will ensure your prison sentence is manageable." A spark of defiance flickered through Mary's fear. "I didn't try to kidnap her. I saved her. You broke into my office. The phones were dead. Nobody was there. You stole my money. I thought I might need it for the hospital," she stammered, the logic sounding flimsy even to her own ears. "I didn't know if they would treat her without it. I wasn't thinking. I was just trying to save her. Damien studied her, his face an unreadable mask. He saw the genuine terror in her eyes, the trembling of her hands. It didn't fit the profile of a hardened operative, but the evidence was overwhelming. The entire situation was too clean, too precise. "I don't believe you," he said flatly. "You will stay here until you decide to tell me the truth." He turned and walked out, the door closing with a heavy, final thud. Left alone, Mary finally broke. Sobs racked her body, born of fear and a profound sense of injustice. She had done the right thing, the only thing she could do, and it had led her to this. It was just like before. The system was designed to crush people like her. She thought of her own daughter, Amani, who had died in her arms 20 years ago. Her small body, starved of air by an asthma attack an underfunded ambulance couldn't reach in time. The memory was a fresh wound, a ghost that had haunted her every day of her life. That was why she couldn't let Princess die. She couldn't live through that again. In his office, Damien watched the interrogation footage on a large screen. He saw Mary's defiance, her fear, and her eventual breakdown. He saw her whisper his daughter's name, a prayer of grief and memory. It was a raw, powerful display of emotion. It was either the performance of a lifetime, or it was the truth. "Run a deep background check on her," he ordered Arthur. "I want to know everything. Every school, every job, every friend, every tragedy." Dig. As Arthur left, Damien's phone buzzed. It was the hospital. The toxicology reports were in. "Mr. Blackwood," the doctor's voice was grave. "This was no allergy. We found traces of a synthetic alkaloid in her system. It's a rare, fast-acting poison designed to mimic the symptoms of anaphylaxis. Someone tried to murder your daughter." The words hit Damien like a physical blow. The data points in his head violently rearranged themselves. This wasn't a kidnapping. It was an assassination. And the elaborate plan wasn't to get Princess out of the house. It was to ensure she died quietly inside it. The next morning, Arthur returned, his face grim. He placed a thin file on Damien's desk. "Mary Johnson," he said. "She's clean. No criminal record, not even a parking ticket. But 20 years ago, she had a daughter. Amani died at age 5. Acute asthma attack. According to the reports, the local emergency services were delayed. By the time they got there, it was too late." Damien opened the file. Inside was a faded newspaper clipping and a picture of a smiling little girl with bright, intelligent eyes. He looked from the photo to the screen showing Mary sobbing in the holding room. The data finally computed. Her actions weren't those of a criminal. They were the actions of a mother who had already lived through the ultimate nightmare and would do anything, break any rule, to prevent it from happening again. He had been wrong. Terribly, brutally wrong. And if Mary was innocent, it meant the real threat was still inside his world. The poison had been administered in the house. The staff had been removed. The security had been diverted. It was an inside job. "Arthur," Damien said, his voice like ice, "pull the full, unredacted security logs from yesterday. I want to see every ghost signal, every disabled sensor. And get me the financials of every single person on my staff. And my family." The investigation was swift and ruthless. David's digital forensics team found that the security system had been partially bypassed from a terminal inside the house an hour before the staff called in sick. The poison was traced to a custom-made patch adhered to the underside of Princess's favorite teddy bear. The financial records told the rest of the story. Damien's younger brother, Edward, a man who lived in his shadow, consumed by jealousy and debt, had recently received a series of large, untraceable payments. He was the only one, besides Damien and Arthur, who had the override codes for the security terminal. The motive was as old as time itself. With Princess gone, Edward's own son would be next in line to inherit the Blackwood Empire. Damien confronted his brother in the family library, the place where they had grown up together. He didn't shout. He didn't rage. He simply laid out the evidence on the polished table between them, the bank statements, the security logs, the toxicology report. Edward crumbled, his facade of charm and sophistication dissolving into pathetic, sputtering denials, which soon gave way to a venomous confession. "You had everything," he spat. You always had everything. It was supposed to be mine. Damien felt nothing but a cold, empty pity. He made a single call, and within minutes, the authorities arrived to take his brother away. The dynasty was fractured, the trust shattered. He was surrounded by vipers. He walked down to the secure room where Mary was still being held. She stood up when he entered, her face pale but her eyes clear. She expected the worst. Damien stopped in front of her. For the first time, the mask of cold control slipped, and she saw the profound exhaustion and grief in his eyes. "I owe you an apology, Miss Johnson," he said, his voice quiet and heavy with sincerity. "You were telling the truth. You didn't just save my daughter's life. You saved her from a fate I never imagined possible." He explained everything: the poison, the betrayal, his brother's arrest. Mary listened in stunned silence, her fear slowly being replaced by a dizzying sense of disbelief. "I will, of course, compensate you for your trouble," he continued. "A sum that will ensure you never have to work again. My lawyers will handle everything. You are free to go." Mary simply nodded, her mind unable to process the sudden reversal of fortune. Freedom. It was all she had dared to hope for. She turned to leave. "Wait," Damien said. She stopped, her back to him. "I have a proposition for you," he said, his voice regaining some of its customary authority, but with a new, unfamiliar undertone of vulnerability. "The people I trusted, the people I paid for loyalty, betrayed me in the most heinous way possible. My brother tried to murder my child." He paused, letting the weight of his words fill the silence. "You, Miss Johnson, had every reason to run, to save yourself. Instead, you risked everything for a child you barely knew. You showed a loyalty that cannot be bought, a courage that I have rarely witnessed." He walked around to face her, his gaze intense. "I don't trust anyone. Not my staff, not my security, not what's left of my family. I don't trust anyone with my daughter's life." He took a breath. "Except you." Mary stared at him, her heart pounding. What are you saying?" "I am offering you a job, not as a maid. I want you to be Princess's official guardian. I want you to run this household. I want you to be in charge of her safety, her well-being, everything. You will answer only to me. You will have unlimited resources. Your salary will be non-negotiable and, frankly, astronomical. I am asking you to protect my daughter." The world tilted on its axis. It was an insane, impossible offer. A maid, a thief, a suspect, being offered the keys to the kingdom. From weak and powerless to the most trusted person in this billionaire's world. This was the moment her life truly changed, not when the alarms blared, but now in this quiet room with this impossible choice. A slow smile touched Mary's lips, the first genuine smile in what felt like a lifetime. It was a smile of resilience, of strength forged in the fires of loss and injustice. The timid maid was gone forever. "Okay, Mr. Blackwood," she said, her voice clear and steady. "Where do I start?" The news sent shockwaves through Madrid's elite society. Headlines screamed about the billionaire who had hired his daughter's kidnapper as her guardian. It was a scandal, a mystery, a source of endless gossip. But Damien Blackwood didn't care. For the first time in years, he knew his daughter was safe. Mary Johnson moved into the villa not as a servant, but as its protector. She commanded a new, hand-picked staff with quiet authority. She oversaw a complete overhaul of the security. But most importantly, she became the fierce, loving guardian princess so desperately needed. She was there to read bedtime stories, to bandage scraped knees, and to watch over her with the unwavering vigilance of a mother who knew exactly what it meant to lose a child. One evening, Damien came home to find Mary and Princess in the garden, laughing as they planted flowers. The sound of his daughter's genuine, carefree laughter was a sound he hadn't realized he'd missed so desperately. He watched them for a moment, a man who had everything and had almost lost the only thing that mattered. He had built an empire of steel and glass, but his daughter's safety now rested in the hands of a woman whose only assets were her courage and her heart. And he knew with absolute certainty it was the soundest investment he had ever made. Be part of our community and share in these heartwarming stories. Just hit like and subscribe. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you can start your day with inspiring lessons and heartfelt moments.